As the Civil War was tearing this young nation apart, a child was born, and that child would eventually help unify this country through his inventions. Hello, my name is Ian Baumgartner, and this presentation is about Henry Ford. What do you think when you hear the name Henry Ford? Do you think of the Ford Motor Company? It would make sense if you did. But Henry Ford has a lot more to offer than just that. He is a man of intuition, determination, and controversy. Hopefully, by the time this presentation is done, you will have learned about this American folk hero. It is worth noting, for this presentation, I will be referring to Henry Ford as Henry to differentiate between the company and the man. On July 30th of 1863, Henry Ford was born to William and Mary Ford. Henry, along with his 7 siblings, were born on the family farm in Michigan. And like most kids his age, he was either helping his dad on the farm or attending a one-room schoolhouse. At the age of 16, Henry walked to Detroit. That's right, walked. While he was in Detroit, he was able to find work at machine shops. Working at these machine shops, Henry Ford was introduced to the internal combustion engine, which Henry grew to love. He was so fascinated by the engines that he ended up building a homemade tractor to help on the farm. He bounced between Detroit and his farm for a few years until he met a woman. He returned to Detroit a married man. In 1893, Henry got a job offer as chief engineer at the Detroit Edison Company, which was a power plant in the area. His role was to help maintain the city's electric services for 24 hours a day. Because he was on call for 24 hours a day, he didn't have regular hours. Because he didn't have regular hours, he had a lot of free time on his hands. During this free time, he tinkered with engines. His first gas engine came out in 1893. He fit the engine to a chassis in 1896. His first vehicle was called the quadricycle because it had 4 horsepower and it had 4 bicycle tires on it as well. Well, he was not the first person to develop a car. Many of his contemporaries did so before him, but it is worth noting that he set himself apart by selling his car. And he sold his first car to make his second car, and he sold his second car to make his third car, and so on. After nearly a decade of gathering resources and financial backers, Henry Ford formed the Henry Ford Motor Company, which wasn't going to win any awards for the most creative name. Soon, Henry had more than a name problem. The investors in the company wanted a passenger car. Henry wasn't ready to sell his cars to the public yet, and this caused tension between him and the investors. Henry was more focused on building one-off race cars and prototyping and making his debut car better. Due to tension between him and investors, Henry Ford ended up leaving his namesake company. It is worth noting that the Henry Ford Company, he reorganized and became the Cadillac Motor Company, so everything worked out for them. But back to Henry Ford, Henry gathered supplies and resources for his new company. He gathered $28,000, which is $806,000 in 2019 money, and he used that money to form the Ford Motor Company. new company, Henry had a vision. At the turn of the century, only the rich could afford a car. Henry wanted to change this. He saw that there was a huge market opportunity that every other motor company was missing, and that was the average American. There was only one problem. Cars were too expensive for anyone but the wealthy. In order to make cars cheaper, he needed to come up with a new idea. Everything else at the time were hand-built. Henry needed a way to lower the cost, and that was the way to do it. He couldn't focus on the materials, he had to focus on the production. There is a theory that he got the idea for the assembly line because of the meat industry. They were known for a few things at the time, and one, that it was super unsanitary, hence Upton Sinclair, and two, the unique way the meat was packed. Humans and machines worked together to kill and process the meat. Whatever his inspirations were, his idea would change the world. What if people coordinated on different parts of the car? Different people could work on different parts at the same time, meaning multiple cars could be built at the same time. And every industry nowadays uses the assembly line, and we can thank this to Henry Ford. Henry unveiled his new car, or from his new company. He said, "I will build a car for the great multitude." It was a car that the average American could afford. Certainly, this car had to have some kind of awe-inspiring name. A name that grabbed attention and demanded respect. A name like T. The Model T was introduced in 1908, and Henry Ford was right about selling to the average American. Millions of Americans could travel across the United States and some parts of the rest of the world because of Mr. Ford. The Model T was so successful that he sold 15 million units in just the United States during its 19-year run. Henry Ford's other qualities were that he was a pacifist and he objected to World War I. He paid his workers well over the standards at the time, nearly double the standards, in fact. He died in Dearborn, Michigan, and he died in April of 1947. Alright, I hope you guys learned that Henry Ford was more than just the Ford Motor Company. He was a true American success story. And anything that you have that was produced in a factory, like your cell phone, some clothes, and yes, your car, you can thank Henry Ford for.